little bit about lessons that we learned while running our business through the pandemic. So on this panel, I would like to welcome Dr. Rupa Huq, our MP. I remember in 2020 when my husband was hosting this panel, he introduced her and he said she was voted in twice, and she had to correct him. She said, no, it's 3 times she's been voted in as our MP of Ealing Central and Acton. So we are glad to have her here with us to not just to talk about, not just to be available to her constituents, but to share her own experiences of, being available to businesses, because she's not just available to people who live in the borough, people who run businesses in the borough. And the other person, we have 4 of us on the panel, 5 of us on the panel. So Dr. Huq, Carol, Sam, thank you for joining us on this panel as well. So because you have seen it also from a different perspective, how businesses managed through the pandemic. We're glad to have Anthony Coyle Dowling, who, oh my gosh, he started up his business during the pandemic. And when he was telling me about how he was trying to find his way, I thought, you need to come and share your story, come and tell people what businesses are going through as they try to start up during the pandemic. And we have Marcus. Where is Marcus? Marcus, there you are. Marcus Eden-Ellis from Bid Perfect, who, when I was talking to him as well, I said, this is a good, listening to how he helped businesses working through the pandemic as they pivoted, even though Marcus's business is Bid Perfect, so he's helping people to write bids to go for tenders. He is dealing with a lot of businesses who are learning to operate in a different way, and including his own business. So welcome all 4 of you to the panel. Can I start with you, Rupa? I mean, you were one of the stories we saw you highlight on your social media was fashionizer uniforms. Remember, what was it about what they went through as a business that stood out for you?
Yeah, thanks, Carlene. And again, I echo everything Bassam said. It's great to see you, even though only on a small screen today, but tomorrow for real. So yeah, I mean, I guess actually Fashionizer, I'll be seeing them later tonight in Parliament. Carlene, I did ask you, but I think you're too busy. So Keir Starmer is doing a reception for women business leaders. Yeah, so I mean, just generally, actually, if we take a little step back before I'll come back to Fashionizer, what is it MPs do? I mean, our job really is to sort of advocate for our constituents. But as Carlene said, if they're businesses who operate within the boundary, we're able to act for those people as well. So every time you email an MP, the response comes back, where do you live? Because it's very strict territorial boundaries. And my one is actually changing a bit. But anyway, let's go with what it is now. So in Ealing Central and Acton includes the Uxbridge Road. So lots of businesses I look after there, from sort of Askew Road up to West Ealing Sainsbury's. It also includes a chunk of Northfields Avenue, the eastern bit of Pitshanger Lane. So yeah, the whole of West Ealing. So, and also other bits on the fringes. So for example, a bit of NW10 around North Acton Station. One of my first bits of casework, probably, and again, although Carlene says 3 times, that's only because we've had an election every other year. Usually I'd be 15 years older. I'm kind of 6 years older. I think it's the start of year 7 now. So HS2 was going to rip up, in fact they have, if you go sort of around North Acton Station in between there and Willesden Junction, the layouts really changed because they're sort of changing the streets for the new station coming. So there were a bunch of actually Middle Eastern sort of baklava type makers that were told that when it happens, they'll be given 6 months to relocate, people who built up businesses for years, and there'd be no help. So I asked a question. So again, everyone knows PMQs, but every minister has a question time. So in the transport questions, I asked one to the railway minister, can you come and see for yourself what HS2 is doing to my businesses and residents? So he did come, And the guy, Robert Goodwill, he's the son of a farmer. He completely understood all the supply chain issues that the businesses were raising. And he said, no, this is not good enough. And so in the end, they did manage to relocate with his help. They got a package. They had, help along the way. So that kind of thing, we're able to use our voice and fight for businesses. And then in 2017, my second election, BBC London said, we'll come and that was the one I was sort of destined to lose, given that there was a Conservative lead in the polls and I was very precarious. I only had a very small majority. So they said, we'll come and film you anywhere. So I thought, Labour is not, things are changing, but not automatically associated as a party of business. So they came to Sweetland, the guy is called, the baklava maker. He was talking about, he was praising me for helping him get relocated, and a whole load of other, there's a laundry, a whole load of businesses in that little area, Atlas Road, NW10, that sort of area. So yeah, that's what we did do, just general, and things like digitalization of tax and VAT. I know very small businesses found that irritating because they don't have an entire person. Sometimes these micro businesses are one person in their entirety or two people to suddenly go over to new systems. Then we had the pandemic. Well, then we had Brexit actually, and that's not gone away. It's sort of been hidden by coronavirus. So a lot of supply chain issues. Again, a lot of people who export, import, they're finding the number of additional duties is crippling, especially for returns, because consumer law, by consumer law, you have to honour any return. And the amount of back and forth and toing and froing all the different extra customs and duties means it's not worth it. I think that's why sometimes on Amazon they say keep it when they've sent you the wrong thing. But for small businesses, it's not a sustainable model. And they're, if we were still in the EU common VAT area, that would solve that. Yeah, and then, Bassam can talk much more about what happened in the pandemic, but the government gave money to businesses to support, to councils to support local businesses. So suddenly we had a lot of queries from people. And I know, Shad Yunus, wasn't it, Bassam, who's sadly no longer with us. He was brilliant. And Carol Sam knows him as well. He was so quick, and he answered emails like at really weird hours and was sorting everyone out. Really sad, the guy, I never met him in real life because everyone was virtual then, but really nice bloke. And I think Ealing had the record of having processed the most grants. Again, I found things like this meeting is good because, again, people who wouldn't have been able to get the town hall. Oh, Yuri, I've just spotted you. Look what I've got in my lapel.
The real Yuri. Apparently we
Yes.
had someone masquerading as him previously.
No way. Okay,
Yes.
I'm wearing with pride because Yuri and I were, Yuri facilitated a visit to the Ukrainian church in Acton last week, which Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner came to. Anyway, things like this allow you, look, I can see inside everyone's house and you can see inside mine. But they do, I often think, have a wider reach, especially those sort of evening Labour Party meetings in a dusty hall. We have a higher attendance now with these. So for the first time, we had meetings with business ministers that, opposition MPs like me would never really get access to before, where we could raise issues. So I remember raising something about the pharmacists. So they're sort of quasi-NHS, but they're also small businesses. They found that driving around medicines and putting up plastic screens was sort of doing them in a lot. Again, they're only a small workforce. Their parking, they were also had issues with. I mentioned this to a business minister, then they all got, I understand it's a grant to cover those things. Well, so it's not as great as, it's a blur, there's some strings attached. But yeah, no, they did get a grant and they were very grateful. So, we were able to raise things in channels like this. Lots of MPs there, a minister in the middle. And banks, for the first time, they reached out and we had these forums with banks. So the bounce back loans and all the different type of loans they had, we were able to put them directly in touch with cases. So Fashionizer I met along the way because she sent me, it's a women-run business, Debbie Leon. She sent me a mask in the post and said with compliments. And I thought, well, this is quite a nice breathable mask. So I emailed back to say, thanks, can I come and have a look? And in fact, I don't know if that was Carol or Bassam, but they managed to get a contract, I think, with Ealing Council that in the 2020 Christmas card, there was a made in Ealing face mask that they did. But they were originally a sort of high-end costume for leisure industry. You know those commissaire type suits with the fringy bits and the bellboy hat? They made those for hotel chains before, those sort of uniforms for Warner Leisure and people like this. And then when the bottom fell out of that, they diversified into mask making. So I just found her a really inspirational sort of person, kept in touch with her. And then before Christmas, she sort of said, I've got 200 masks for you and all your MP friends. So I went and collected them and sort of put them in my Christmas cards, some of them. So it's just managed. In fact, the best way to distribute them was just in the chamber, sort of just give them to people.
Getting the Ealing products out there. So that
exactly, yes. And I said to people, think of Acton every time you wear that, because they're actually from Acton. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I don't know how long I was supposed to talk. I probably exceeded it, but can go on and on if you wish. Thanks.
We love hearing you talk, Rupa. That's why we voted for you. But you know, you touched on two things there that we could draw in two other people on the panel. You were talking about all the grants and the you know, how that's something we could ask Carol to highlight. I mean, the amount of grants that Ealing Council was able to put through for businesses, you know, was it more than you expected? Were you able to, did you learn anything about businesses from that?
It was huge, and you know, my poor colleagues in finance, I don't think they've had, you know, it was on the one hand, obviously it was great that we were getting the grant through, and as you as you highlighted, we were one of the top boroughs in terms of getting the grants through quite quickly. But on the good news, yes, it was grant after grant, but obviously for the downside, some businesses didn't qualify and for whatever reason. So again, colleagues in business rates and finance and other colleagues across the council were having to deal with those. So it was quite, but in terms of numbers, I've got them here for you, Carlene. Actually, I've got some, because you wanted me to look at some of the data. So just after the COVID happened, we did a quite a snap business survey, and and I know this seems like ages ago, but just really to highlight the scale of the impact. We know obviously it's impacted businesses severely, but just to bring it closer to home. So we did a snap business survey between April and May 2020. We had over 1,000 businesses responded, so it was really a relatively good sample. And, you know, as to be expected, but just some of the figures, over 70% were concerned about their survival. 96 businesses were near closure, you know, and 20% were making staff redundant during that period. And we know that we were one of the second highest. I think we may have topped the scale in terms of businesses that had to furlough their staff. Some real significant blows to businesses, as you could imagine. But I think one of the things I just wanted to highlight, and we saw images of this in terms of the way businesses and the local people galvanized in terms of delivering support and volunteering. What was really heartening was to see when we did that survey, even though these businesses, you know, had to close and were on their knees in terms of having access to finance in particular, because the money wasn't coming through fast enough. We had over 50 businesses that said they were happy to support in terms of unused stock, volunteering, use of their vehicle. So again, it just shows, you know, in some parts, the human nature when we need to pull together, how we can make it happen. So we know it's tough, but in terms of the grants, so there were some statutory grants that went out depending on the sector and the rateable values. So these are figures from colleagues in the business. We paid out over 133.6 million. I don't know if that figures increased, but this is the latest stats I have. And we made over 22,095 awards. So, but in terms of, then there was some additional grants money that came through, which we were able to flex slightly, and it was an application process, and we targeted businesses in the sectors that we know are particularly impact and relevant to our local economy, such as, so we focused on the aviation grant because we know there was lots of businesses, particularly small businesses such as cab drivers, who were impacted because of their proximity to Heathrow and the fact that Heathrow, that again, people weren't flying, so it impacted there. We looked at the creative sector, so we dispersed grants in aviation, creative, and also looking at the green economy. So lots of those grants were already were also dispersed. And in addition to that, and really pulling on the findings we had from the business surveys, what we were able to see, and I think Rupa picked this up as well with the example she provided with the lady that made masks, is that those businesses who had an online presence could, could also pivot and were able to sustain themselves because they had a digital presence. They were able to sell their stocks online without having people physically come to their store. Now, there's a good case study of Lisa Dodo she runs a Dodo pub in Hanwell. Obviously, she had to close and she was able to successfully pivot. And I think, big up to Lisa, because I thought what she did, she ran cheese and beer pairing and was able, that's just one small example of businesses using their online presence to continue in these tough times. And then what we did is we had some funding to deliver some business support programs. And one of the programs we did working with Save the High Street was an online training program. And I think it's still going, and they are going to be at the expo tomorrow. And we've got Marcus here. Marcus was also one of the business providers providing how to win contracts. And we also launched an accelerator program, which was quite intense. So it took businesses, gave them a diagnostic, and based on their need was then able to target and deliver bespoke training support based on what they wanted. So quite a host of programs in addition to the grants, business support, and my colleagues who are delivering on Ealing's behalf, Marcus from Bid Perfect, Smorgasbord, doing the business accelerator, and Save the High Street. I think they may be on later, but I know definitely they'll be having an online presence. And we will be delivering, just a plug, some business pop-ups over the coming months. And yeah, I'll shut up now and give someone else a chance to speak. Thanks.
While Carol is here, I just want to make sure, I'm going to put it out on the social media to get everyone subscribed to the business news that Ealing Council puts out, because whenever I talk about that business news newsletter, people say, what business news newsletters are going to be? That's something we're going to work on over these 2 days to make sure everybody is signed up to that. I mean, Carol was just talking about funding and that sort of thing. And I want to ask Anthony now, when you were starting up, Anthony, did you feel that you could go it on your own? Did you feel that you needed funding? I mean, I don't want to ask your personal business if you actually went for funding, but I mean, was it good for you to know that that funding was there?
To be honest, being a first-time business owner, it was all completely new to me. So I came from the corporate events industry, one of the world's largest. And we had about 400 or 500 staff just in the UK, and I looked after sales and marketing. So I pivoted completely from the events world, and I left that company because I knew it was on the cards. But that events world isn't going to come back for at least 3 years in the world that I knew. And when I left, I sat down with my partner and we just thought, what are the basics? And it was keep a roof over our head, put the food on our tables, and keep together as much as we can. And simple things made a big difference. So we reprioritized our life. And I had to think very quickly, what did I want to do? And I loved property. I've got property myself. I love location. I love Kirsty also. I love houses. So I thought, I'll go into the property game. So when I left I was sales and marketing director at my last company and set up my own. I left on the Friday and I registered my company on the Monday as an independent estate agent. Someone introduced me to a global franchise, Keller Williams. So I was able to operate under a framework that gave me the guidelines, the training and the support. With regards to funding, not so much. I was fortunate in the 2 years, I saved up a lot because we weren't allowed to go out. So me and my partner just reprioritized our shopping. Instead of shopping in the nicer shops, we shopped in the other shops. And we just, I suppose, mapped out what it was to be a business owner. And it was really tough because not only was I pivoting from an industry that I knew for 25 years into something completely new. I had no contacts, no processes. I knew not that much about the back office stuff. Networking was tough because you couldn't network. I had to retrain on Zoom in an industry that I didn't really know that well. And so I spent the first 6 months just training and learning. So to answer your question, I didn't really go for funding. We just simply went and just thought, I reset my GPS. I did my goals, my 5-year goal, my 1-year goal, broke it down by 1 month, 1 week, and said, I know what my GPS is. And this is my career now. I'm 40, I was 47, I'm 49 now. I'm 47, and this is my life. I'm going to make this a success. And so there was no plan B. And what was really humbling for me was, historically, I would leave work, come home, get in the flat and chill. And I didn't know my neighbours. I didn't know people on my street. I didn't even know my community. And I've been in Ealing only for 6 years. And what was really nice was it's forced me to go and knock on my neighbours' doors and ask for their name. And so now I know my neighbours.
That's how I met him, because he lives in the next street from me.
And, you know, it was like, okay, well, if I'm an estate agent and I'm supposed to be the local expert, I've got to get to know my community. So I put things out on nextdoor.com saying, if you're an independent business, if Ealing's got over 350,000 people in the borough, how do we lean on each other to support each other? There must be a way. So I started to put on the back, and again, this is without even knowing Carlene had her thing going on. I put together a booklet and I said, if you want to go in my booklet, I'll pay for 1,000 booklets. All I need to know is what's your business, what do you do, what's your contact details. I'll get them printed and I'll distribute them to the community and say, before you go to the big chains, look at the independents. And then what's been really nice is I've got to meet these independent companies, coffees, and it's like Matt, who's on the line, who does my video and stuff for properties. I met him through the booklet. So honestly, it's been really humbling. So like the first couple of months was really difficult, but now I think leading with contribution and asking the community for help, flyering, you know, when you get leaflets through the door. I put something on Facebook going, I can't leaflet all these and I've got no money because I'm starting my own business. Can anyone volunteer their time to help me? And people were coming forward going, I'll give you a hand. And it was like some days when people would write to me and say, I'll help you. I just wanted to cry because you're like, I'm not paying you anything. But your generosity is just like literally amazing.
I love hearing these stories, these startup stories, you know. It throws me back to my first days trying to figure everything out. And you know, let me bring in Marcus at this point. And, you know, because Marcus, I think you deal with a lot of businesses like Anthony's, you know, they don't know. When we start up, a lot of us don't know what we're doing. And I mean, how are these businesses managing, Marcus?
What a good question. And it's not one that I entirely feel that I have a good answer to. I have seen so many organizations in different states as a result of of what the pandemic has done to them. You know, and when you start up a company, especially just prior to a pandemic happening or something along those lines, that's not in your business plan. No one wrote in, what do I do? What will I do if a pandemic, you know, threatens my business? And unfortunately, you know, it's a sad fact that very often business plans struggle to survive their first contact with reality. On this occasion, I think that the advice that I was giving to not only businesses that I've met through our association with the council, but also in the other work we do in our other life as a supplier to businesses, not just in the UK, but all over the world, is that you have to understand the difference between adversity and opportunity. And rather than cower away, if you like, for want of a better word, from the effects of something that you can't control, you have to see, you have to work out how you can manipulate it. Anthony was obviously a case in point. And what Rupa said earlier on about the company pivoting towards making masks as opposed to what they were doing. The only thing I can really do is give you a couple of brief examples that my own company did. You know, we had to, we were in a physician heal thyself situation. So being an old dinosaur like I am in my early 60s and starting my company 16, 17 years ago, I had got into a kind of groove that was very comfortable to pull on. Mixing my metaphors there, I apologize. But essentially, when this happened, we had to very quickly do something that not only suited us, but helped us keep the clients that we had. Now, one of our core services is training, which universally was held face-to-face in classrooms, in hotels, wherever. So we had to very quickly turn towards delivering our product online. And literally, we had to rewrite everything we did and that we had gotten used to over the amount of time we've been in business, and transfer it into an online delivery vehicle, if you like. But it's not just about that. It's about making the content still compelling and so on. We had to reimagine our entire service delivery and take advantage of what was in front of us, and not mourn what had gone. And that's what you have to do. You have to say, this is it. This is the, you know, it's an overused phrase, but it is currently the new normal, or it is our new reality. So we're either going to exist in that new reality and adjust ourselves accordingly, or we are going to continue to try and do what we were doing before. And in my past corporate life, prior to starting Bid Perfect, I was commercial director for an American company called Office Depot. And one of our mantras was the only constant is change. And we had to accept that and it's the embracing, the changing of your mindset, essentially, that gives you the permission to be different to what you started out at, and not to cling to the vestiges of what went before. We also saw it as an opportunity to promote our brand, somewhat cynically, I know, but this was something that what we did was we thought, what can we give away? What that is actually helpful? So we put an advert out on LinkedIn, which was, you know, is a great resource. It was really a godsend, if you like. And I've got some, what we did was we have an e-learning suite to complement our in-person training. And it's a series of modules to help people be better at bidding. And what we did was we offered, out of the 14 modules, we offered any company that asked for it access to 5 of the modules free of charge. It didn't cost us anything to give that away, because we wouldn't have been doing business with those companies anyway. And the figures I've got down here, because I checked before I came on, was 61 companies in the UK took advantage of that. And of those 61 companies, 11 then contacted us for further work that was paid for work. So sometimes, you know, just looking at something that you've got that in actual fact it would cost you nothing to give away will make you an attractive organization to be connected to. But I guess my overriding message is that that for companies that struggle, I mean, to be fair, it's, you know, the pandemic hit what, nearly 2 years ago. Oh no, it's 2 years this month, isn't it, really? So I guess those that were going to survive have survived. And those that were going to fall by the wayside have probably fallen by the wayside.
That's a good way to look at it. Definitely, you know, if you're strong enough to survive a pandemic, you're strong enough to survive in business. And I think, go ahead, Marcus. I think that's really a really good way to finish up this discussion. Thank you, Rupa, for giving us some, reminding us that businesses can come to you as as businesses in the borough can come to you, not just residents. We can come to you as our businesses. Thank you, Carol, for giving us those figures. I mean, I was writing down, some big money that you sent through to us businesses. Thank you for organizing that. Thank you, Anthony, for giving us that point of view. And I can imagine the eating the beans out of a tin can situation. But you've done well, and you survived the pandemic, as Marcus says, onward and upward. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for that discussion. There's some other things that we can talk about. Stay on in the chat to talk for a bit. But now I can see Stephen Fry from UWL is on standby, ready to. We have a couple of short presentations from the university, a big organization in the borough. So we're glad to have them here. Also, I teach at the university, so my heart is very close to UWL. So can we move into, Stephen is the director of the Westmont Innovation Hub at UWL, and